We're here at Audubon Park, and the fall migration's underway. Welcome everyone. We're here today at Audubon Park, Deltona's premier birding spot. We're going to be talking about the fall migration, the birds we can expect to see, talking a little bit about the birds who have migrated south to Central and South America and left our area, and the birds we can expect to see as the winter gets colder and colder up north. Today we have with us two different officers from the West Volusia Audubon that I'll introduce to you. We have Steve Kentner and Eli Chaparral. Steve, if you'll give us your affiliation with West Volusia Audubon.
Sure, I am the Vice President and Conservation Chair for West Volusia Audubon. Been in the position for about 5 years now.
Eli?
And I'm the chairperson for field trips. I lead most of the field trips for birding and nature for our Audubon group.
Excellent. And I've been on many of Eli's field trips, several of them here at Audubon. Let me tell you a little bit about Audubon Park. The city of Deltona, working with the St. Johns River Water Management District, developed this area as the Ledford Regional Surface Water Treatment Facility, which simply means there's a large area that when we have rain, water runs into it. The city looked at it, senior management said, you know, we can do a lot more with this than just having a big flat area for water to soak into. So the city developed a park around this area. Working with the Audubon Society, working with city staff, it's turned in, as I said, one of the premier birding spots here in West Volusia. We're going to be looking at different ecological parts of the park today. There are several ecosystems that we'll be viewing and talking about as we go through the park and mentioning different birds that we see. Again, birds that have left, migrated out, birds that will be migrating in, and the birds that we see here today. Eli, if you would, tell us a little bit about the several ecological systems that we'll be walking through today.
Be happy to, but first let me say that no matter which ecological system habitat you're in, when it comes to birds, they could be flying overhead having nothing to do with it, so that adds to it.
Quite true.
So in our park, to start with, this oblong piece of property is where the parking lot is, and it's surrounded by trees. And as you enter from the trees heading over to the water impound areas, as we call them, you're walking through normal forest, and then over a boardwalk, which is a marsh area, a seasonal marsh area. In the heavier rainy seasons, it has a lot of water. And in the drier season, just depends on how much water is left over from the heavy rain season. And the so-called water impound area, we have deep water, shallow water, and marsh with marsh wetland plants. And as we pass through that area, there's a trail fully wooded on each side that comes down to the bicycle trail, the cross-county bicycle trail. And then going back to the corner of the impound, there's a trail that then leads up through the sides of the seasonal marsh area and back to the parking lot. And part of this trail is what we call upland trees, and other parts are kind of marshy, a little squishy on the feet.
Okay, excellent. So we have multiple different ecological areas. Each one attracts different birds. You have birds that really love the margins between the ecological areas. We have open areas and forested areas, and especially the edges are very attractive to the different bird species. And we may see more than just birds out today. Audubon Park is home to deer, different small mammals, the armadillo, raccoons, possums, etc. All these different animals live here. It's a sanctuary for wildlife, so they're all welcome here. I've never seen a black bear. I have seen a bobcat here within the park. So a lot of different animals, and hopefully we'll be lucky today and see a few of them. So at this point, let's take a walk into the park. Steve, What do we have right here? I mean, it's not a huge oak tree or anything like that, but what type of plant do we have right here?
This is a rusty Lyonia. It's one of the plants very, very common here in southwest Volusia County and in Deltona. Lyonia Preserve was named for this plant. But this is a very drought tolerant, very slow growing plant. Has relatively small leaves that curl back on themselves, and has that rusty color, which is why it has that name.
On the bottom side of the
On
leaf?
the bottom side of the leaf.
What are the little red circles that we see on it?
These are lichens.
Okay.
And this is actually called a red lichen. And these are they're not hurting the tree, they're just growing on the surface of the tree. The tree is just support for the plant.
Well, we're here in a highlands area, walking along a mulch trail at Audubon Park. We have some fair-sized oaks, but they're not the huge live oaks that you see, you know, in quotes, like in the plantations, that type of thing. But they're fair-sized. They'll drop a lot of acorns for the wildlife. But we have a lot of understory here. Eli, what's the overstory that we're looking at right over here?
Well, we have some pretty tall longleaf pines, and the oaks aren't that small either, so it's a good coverage. Of course, the ground cover on my side are these saw palmettos, and they grow everywhere in this part of the state, in both moderately dry soils to very wet soils.
Okay, so we've got longleaf, and I guess that's also loblolly, some of them in there.
Yes, we have several varieties of bays in this area, I believe.
And that's a big pine tree. It's a big pine tree.
There's one thing we haven't mentioned because we're talking about the trees, and I don't see it at the moment, but there's always a variety of mushrooms. At any time of the year, there are different mushrooms that are in season in the park as well.
True, and we've had some good rain, so we should be able to see some mushrooms.
Yes.
Well, we see some lichen right here on the rusty Lyonia.
Which, by the way, is a fungus and an algae growing together. It's one plant, one species. So it's two different things growing together.
That's unique.
Yeah. So they have a symbiotic relationship.
Okay.
And another thing that's not that noticeable on the ground, we have this vine. This is actually a native grape vine to Florida. And in season, they do make little grapes.
Little, what people call fox grapes?
I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, I've heard them, you know, since I was a kid, called fox grapes.
Muscadine or scuppernong.
Okay. Steve, what's this right here?
This is a silk bay. This is a real bay plant. You could put this in your soup. It's silk bay because it has a silky coating on the back of the leaf. Can you see that leaf there? And when you crush one of them up and smell it, it smells just like the bay leaf your mother puts in soup. Exactly the same smell.
Yeah, it does.
Delicious.
Delicious. Okay. Yeah. Hey, it's fall migration. It's getting cooler. We need to have soup today for lunch. Okay. Let's just walk along a little bit here and see what else we see in the different types of trees. I see a lot more lichen over here. That one's on oak trees.
Well, I have a Spanish moss hanging down here. Very traditional southern type of plant. They used it to make bedding out of in the early days. They stuffed the mattresses with it.
Okay, and it an aerial plant?
Aerial plant is just using the tree as support.
Okay.
Of which
so
is
no
not
roots.
from Spain, and it's not moss.
Oh, right.
Well,
It's just
true.
it's the name. I've heard it called graybeard and everything like that too. Because I've got one of those graybeards. Okay, so.
One of the problems with stuffing the mattresses with it is that the red bugs are in there in great numbers.
Yeah,
and,
red bugs, chiggers. They bite and infest people, and then you scratch yourself practically to death. Eli, tell me the difference between palmettos and a palm tree.
Okay, well,
There's a difference in the leaves. You've told me once before.
well, just to be technical first, there's no such thing as a palm tree.
Okay.
Palms are in, I believe, the grass family. And with this particular plant, would you please hold my scope, sir?
You're going to allow me to hold your telescope? Oh,
Well,
foolish
first
child.
of all, there are two palmettos that I'm familiar with. The saw palmetto, which one way you can tell it's a saw palmetto is along the edge of the stem. There's little teeny weeny teeth, so to speak.
You can cut yourself on them.
Oh gosh, very badly. The other kind is a scrub palmetto. And the way I was taught to tell the difference, on the saw palmetto, where the stem meets the frond, it's fairly straight across. And on the others, it comes up to a little bit of a point. And the frond on the actual sable palm, which is a state tree, so to speak, the leaf is much larger, much larger. The whole stem and frond is about 6 to 8 feet long. And this stem comes up to a very long, fine point in the middle.
Okay, so that's the sable
Yes,
palm. Okay.
sable palm.
I think we'll be seeing those in another ecological section of the park down closer to the state coast-to-coast biking and walking trail, the old rivers, the rails to trails trail. Okay, hey, I've held that long enough. That thing's expensive. All right, let's walk along, see if we see anything. Oh, that, unless I'm mistaken, is wild blueberry.
It's it may be one of the 2 varieties we have. And they are much different than the northern varieties, but the fruit is just as sweet.
Yes, it is. I've seen little tiny ones like that, and they are very sweet. I mean, we've walked 20 feet here and identified 5, 6 varieties of plants that are, I'm not going to say unique to Florida, but that, you know, people would be interested in coming and viewing. So the park itself is birds, animals, plants, fungi, mushrooms. So there are a lot of different things to experience within the park.
And even though, once again, it's on the ground, so we don't notice it, from time to time we have
moss.
these beautiful green mosses. They're
Yeah,
just
the emerald colored
beautiful.
moss.
And other than the truly dry season in the winter, you walk up and touch them and you squeeze them and water comes dripping out. They're just a sponge. It's beautiful.
All right.
One thing that's a little different here is many of our oaks are evergreen. They don't lose their leaves in the wintertime.
Right.
And this is one of those evergreen oaks here. This is a Chapman oak. Has a larger, lumpy leaf. And so that's the Chapman oak. It's one of the more common oaks that we find in the forest here.
Okay. A lot of interesting things to look here. And of course, here at the park, we do have some signage out identifying different types of trees, foliage, that type of thing. The city plans on working and expanding the identification of plants to help people learn more about them. We're on the trail. Let's continue on. Oh, guys, look at here. Here's one of those air plants that we were looking at back up in the tree. Now, look at here. We've had some storms in the afternoons. Apparently this one's been blown out of the tree. It's still got a little piece of the limb here that it was attached to, but this gives an idea of the, you say bromelade? Which you can, bromelia, okay. Sort of a unique type structure on here. It looks almost like seed pods on the end like this, but you can see there's no real root system. It just enough to attach itself to the limb, stick, whatever it is of the tree. Okay, Eli, as we look up in the trees here and we're starting to realize, you know, we are here, you know, the fall migration season. Tell us a little bit about migrations and the birds that we have been seeing and we will be seeing here in the park.
Well, to begin with, we have this thing called fall migration and, quite frankly, other half of the year, spring migration. And it's more of a name than a description completely. Here's an example. The swallow-tailed kite, which is the state bird of Florida and shows up on, you know, many of our signage around the state.
Mm-hmm.
It spends half of the year in Florida and the southern U.S. states and the other half in South America. However, we first see them in late February, and by mid-August, they're gone. And other birds that do migrate, that spend half the year in one location, half another, it's not just moving in the spring and fall as such, where the migration periods are named after. Another example, in the terms of the small songbirds, the yellow warbler, they start showing up in Florida as they're coming south for the winter. They start showing up already in August, and they stick around till about February.
Okay.
So the fall and winter are split differently than we normally think.
Right. Yeah, and we get migrants from up north where they may be having ice and everything like that, while here in Florida, even during what we'd consider here the colder part of the year, it's still temperate temperatures.
Yeah, and migration also has other factors. It's not just that it's cooling off up north, shall we say.
Okay,
It's that, number one, some of their food sources are dwindling as the season goes on.
good point.
And number two, they have a biological clock for breeding.
Mm-hmm.
And migration has a lot to do with when and where they're going to be breeding and nesting.
Okay, interesting. Tell us a little bit, if you would, what birds we've seen so far, heard and seen so far on our short walk that we've only made not far past the entrance here into Audubon Park, but what we've seen and heard and what we can expect to see in here.
Well, we heard earlier a red-shouldered hawk.
Mm-hmm.
They're very loud, boisterous birds. And there were several black vultures and turkey vultures flying overhead. They're always cruising, looking for dinner, shall we say.
There you go.
They're our local garbage pickup men.
Yes, they are.
And we heard one Carolina wren. It's a little quiet now, but we have one Carolina wren talking off to the side. This type of an environment, these modest-sized trees, forest that we're in right now,
Mm-hmm.
this is an area that your local, what we call residential birds are found. Your northern cardinal, your tufted titmouse, and other small forest birds, your Carolina wren and all. And as the the birds migrate here starting in the fall, late summer, early fall, then most of the so-called songbirds, which are warblers,
Mm-hmm.
these little 4 to 6 inch long birds, this is where they're found. And of course we have woodpeckers.
Yeah, well,
We have the very small downy woodpecker
mm-hmm.
and up to the largest pileated woodpecker that's
Mhm.
found in anywhere in North America. We have them here.
Yeah, Steve and I had, standing in the parking lot, had seen a very nice large pileated woodpecker fly by, okay, just before you had arrived. You should have got here early, you'd seen him, okay? All right, let's walk along here and keep our eyes open for birds on the ground and the trees and flying over.
There's a button bush over here.
Blooming?
A few of them, but mostly gone to seed.
Yeah, most have gone to seed. It's pretty. Little whitish puffballs.
Some dragonflies.
lot of 'em.
Several different kinds.
Eli, what do we call a wetlands like this?
Well, in this case, I have a little background. The first year we were here creating the park, the nature park of Audubon Park, it was bone dry.
Mm-hmm.
It was in a drought time of the year, several drought years in a row, and now we have water for the past 2 or 3 years. This is called ephemeral. Sometimes there's water and sometimes there's not. But ultimately, always will have water when the rains are strong enough and common enough.
Sure. Well, with water in the pond here from the rain, I noticed that there are a lot of dragonflies. Of course, we're walking along the boardwalk, so we're up above most of the dragonflies, looking down, at them. A lot of water bugs on the water, scooting around, different things like that. I see on this side pickerel weed with a beautiful purple flower, and bay bushes over here with the red berries on them.
You know, we sometimes go to fancy gardens at all, at certain estate properties to look at the beautiful plants and the butterflies and the gardens they plant. Here, it just naturally, this is how it is. Nature put this here, and nature comes to it to feed and to live. Just beautiful.
It's truly one of our favorite places to come as a family. We come out here to Audubon Park and enjoy the wetland here, and I got some great dragonfly shots because the dragonflies tend to land on the plants here, close range. So looking down on them,
Mm-hmm.
get some great photos of the dragonflies.
Beautiful spot. Beautiful spot. Okay, well, we're now going to be heading for another highlands area outside the ponding area here, the ephemeral, Eli, ephemeral pond?
Ephemeral.
Ephemeral pond, okay. All right, so we'll be heading out through some more oaks, and in the very near distance, I see some very large pine trees. Gentlemen, let's take a walk. Fellas, we come walking through the woods down there. We're in the shade on that little trail coming across the pond, and suddenly you step out of the shade almost instantly, a magic moment, and here's the ponding area. got a nice picnic table, gents. Let's take use of it.
Jerry, I think it's a little blue over there on the far side of the pond.
Little blue what, Steve?
Blue heron.
Blue heron, okay.
And there's a whole bunch of cattle eagers back there behind it, the white birds. See those all over Central Florida. And the whole area just really working with barn swallows swooping over the open wetlands. This water feature is just a great asset to the community as far as bringing birds to this location. We've seen many different types of birds here, including roseate spoonbills that come in for the water.
We have records of over 200 different species being seen in Audubon Park in the past year and a half.
Well, I don't care what anyone says. It's a beautiful spot.
I've been to many places looking at nature and birds, and when I bring folks here, almost immediately they just simply say, "My gosh, this is beautiful." It's almost everybody without fail. It's just an incredibly beautiful location. And to think, 4 or 5 years ago, this was a chicken farm.
Yeah.
Just incredible. And even though people did create and contour this land and dig it out, the plants are native, natural plants to Florida. It's a perfectly natural scene for Florida. And it's all but in our backyards.
And it's this gem in Deltona. We're starting to see more and more people recognize that here, more people talking about Audubon Park. And it's kind of fun we've been a part of this from the very beginning, Eli, and it's nice to have people say, "Wow, have you seen that place?"
Yeah, it's
yeah,
great.
I've seen it. I was helped originate that type of thing. I really would like for the word to get out to more folks who are interested in nature, birding, plants, everything, because it is Eli, as you said, it's a nature park. And Audubon is Audubon's not just birds, Audubon's nature, okay, and the experience of nature. So this is a particularly good poster child for what we're talking about. This is a beautiful spot.
Just about any living creature that lives in Central Florida, not necessarily is here, but may be found here. We're part of Central Florida. We have the wetlands, we have the highlands, the hammocks, marshes. We have all but saltwater environment. We have every other type of habitat you can typically find in Florida, we have right here. And so all the wildlife that exists, at least in Central Florida, may be and has mostly been seen here at one time or other.
And there's lots of undeveloped land right around us, so those animals can move through there to get here.
Yes.
St. John's River is just to the south of us, just a little.
Yes, we're within a half a mile of the St. John's River and the Lake Monroe, Lake Jessup, Lake Harney, all the large water areas off to our south.
Well, fellas, let's take a walk a little bit around the ponds here and see some of the birds and other wildlife a little bit closer. And we want to walk over into the area of the large hammock. I mean, some very large oaks and very large pines that we can see in the distance on the far side, directly south of us, with a road that leads down to the pedestrian and bicycle trail that runs from one coast of Florida to the other coast of Florida. The city of Deltona is down on the southern end of that, and it does run through the southern end of this park. So we have 2 access points. You can drive in and park at the parking lot where we parked this morning and started this tour, or you could come in, park at one of the areas that is available up and down, and take your bicycle and come down to Audubon Park at the far end down there. So guys, talk to our audience a little bit about, what are we expecting to see as we sit here and in the very, very near future, as it gets colder and the days get shorter and the birds are migrating. What are we going to be seeing here in Audubon Park?
Well, just to review briefly, our so-called residential birds that are here all year round are also, large numbers all year round. They include the cattle egret, the snowy egret, the little blue heron, the tricolored heron, the great blue heron,
Mm-hmm.
the herons and egrets. Also, they include the, we have 2 different ducks that are found here all year round as well. Well, 3 possible, right? The black-bellied whistling duck,
Mm-hmm.
mallards, and the mottled duck. Those are our 3 ducks that are residents.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
The mottled duck, is that also the one that they call the Florida mallard, or is that a different duck?
I'm not familiar with that term.
Okay.
The mottled duck looks like a female mallard.
That's what it is. Just
Identification is its beak or bill, because the name is interchangeable, is a light yellow.
okay.
The mallards have a darker colored bill, and sometimes it's tricky to tell the difference. So going on to the shorebirds, we have, quite frankly, all but no shorebirds, the sandpipers and plovers in the summer months, but now we're starting to see the spotted sandpiper and solitary sandpiper that actually they migrate through. They're here for a period of time as they're heading further south. And then the black-necked stilts, the Wilson snipes, least sandpipers we have here quite in abundance. The killdeer, which are a plover, they're typically here all year round, but they're even more visible, I've noticed, in the winter months.
Mm-hmm.
And getting away from the water impounds in the treat areas, we get the main birds we start to see are the warblers we're seeing. And our most numerous 2 warblers are the palm warbler and the yellow rump warbler. But yellow warblers and black and white warblers and northern parulas, we have a wide variety of warblers here.
Okay.
And the rose-breasted grosbeak shows up in our trails a little further down from here. I mean, just a myriad of birds, just incredible.
So over 200 species have been logged here
Yes.
at the park. Now,
now-
I want to say something on
Yes.
that, okay? This is not the city of Deltona claiming there have been 200 species. Who's making that claim?
Well, we from Audubon, in particular myself and Harry Robinson, who have done most of the bird surveys here. Now, that number includes, I remember one time that a common loon flew overhead.
Mm-hmm.
That was one time only, but it's counted the way we birders counted it. It was seen from here, so it's counted as part of the results of being here and observing nature.
Okay, well, fellas, I tell you what then. Let's take a moment and start walking through the grasslands out here adjacent to the ponds, looking at some of the birds and other critters of nature. And then we'll walk down toward the pedestrian bicycle trail, which is on the other side of a very, very large oak hammock down there. Fellas, we're walking along through basically an uplands area here. I mean, right here in front of us, we've got a pine that's, 80, 90 feet tall. We have a big live oak over here, other oaks and cabbage palms. I mean, some big cabbage palms in here. And this is part of the trail right here is just beautiful. This is scenic. No other way to say it.
That oak tree, if you'll notice, the branches are loaded with the resurrection ferns.
Yes, they are. Tell us about the resurrection fern, Eli.
They're small ferns. They grow on trees. They don't harm the tree, but they attach their roots under the barks of the tree. And when it's a nice wet season, they are beautiful green. In the drier seasons or in dry spells, they dry up and shrivel up and turn brown as if they died. But the next time it rains, within a few hours, they're full size, plush, and green, and hence the name Resurrection. Fern.
Now, what about over here in this cabbage palm? You were pointing out the larger fern there. What is that?
That's the pseudopodium fern. Pseudo meaning false, podium meaning foot. False foot fern.
Look at that. And I guess it has its roots down in the wet areas at the base of the palm fronds that have broken off.
Probably. I don't actually know that per se.
Take it for granted, okay?
I want to make one other mention about
Okay.
the resurrection ferns. Where you see resurrection ferns in these oak trees, from time to time, you'll see something that looks like long, thick grass blades. Those are actually one of 2 varieties of orchids. the green fly orchid, which makes a beautiful little flower that big, and the butterfly orchid that makes more of a orchid-sized flower that you would normally imagine. This is not the season, however. Late winter and spring is when they're in blossom.
All right.
And
Now
we
we
see
see
the beautyberry as well.
The American beautyberries.
right there. I mean, we're standing here. While we were standing here just a moment ago, we heard a barred owl not that far from us to basically the east. We've had other birds flying through the trees here that we simply enjoyed the area. I mean, it's a wonderful area, you know, as part of our parks here. Folks, thank you very much for joining us today for the Audubon program. Steve, Eli, thank you for joining us here today. Thank you to our audience for joining us here today also. We're going to go explore a little bit more in the park, and we look forward to seeing you in our parks here in Deltona again next month. Thank you.